nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. First up is open forum, and we don't have anyone that signed up tonight. Next is presentations. We have a few of those tonight. So Chief Wills.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like the next one is pretty eager, so if Aries can come up here. Yeah, I know. There he is. I'll start first, so that way by the time he gets up, we'll be good. So our next officer, Aries, excited to be here. Aries is a purebred German Shepherd and was born in the Czech Republic on July 2nd, 2023. Officer Ryan Polachek and Aries began their training together in March 2025 and graduated from their intensive 16-week canine school on June 27th. The pair successfully passed dual certifications in both narcotics and patrol operations through the United States Police Canine Association and the National Police Canine Association through our country as well. Ryan and Aries' first shift was on July 4th. They have already proven to be a strong team, and we are excited to welcome this addition to the patrol division. We are very grateful to our residents and the business community for assisting in the purchase of Aries. Some fun facts about Mr. Aries. He goes crazy for tennis balls, can find them anywhere that Ryan hides them, knows both English and German, and shares the same birthday month as his handler, Ryan, in July. Mayor Click will now administer the oath of office to Canine Aries, which is a little bit different than a normal officer, but we'll go ahead and move forward with it. photo with all three up there.
All right. Well, next we'll move on to approve agenda. Council members may add items to the agenda for discussion purposes or staff direction only. The council will not normally take official action on items added to the agenda. Anyone have anything to add?
Move to approve as printed.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. We'll move on to consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed elsewhere on the agenda. Does anyone have anything to remove?
I'd like to remove 5.9.
5.9. Right. Anything else?
Oh, that'll be it.
Right. Can I get a motion less 5.9?
Yep, so I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda 5.9.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes. So 5.9, approval of Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission reappointments.
Mainly, I just wanted to thank Mike and Judy Volkers for their service and just say congratulations for reappointment, I guess. That would be it.
And Dale.
And I got those correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dale
Dale
Fuller.
Fuller. All right.
Yes.
Sorry, was Dale Fuller? No, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thanks Dale and Judy.
Yep, Dale and Judy. Sorry about that. I don't have it written down here and I'm just going off
Right.
that list here. So I'll make a motion to approve the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission reappointments.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, that motion passes. We will move on to public hearing 6.1, vacation of the west half of Hawkins Drive portion, which is in the Cowley Lake Preserve development. Who's got that one? Oh, Alec.
That's me. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight, we have a vacation hearing for the west half of Hawkins Drive. This is related to the Cowley Lake Preserve development near Cowley Lake, running along the south side of Cowley Lake. The portion of Hawkins Drive to be vacated, if you're looking at your screen, is the very eastern side of the development, right next to Fox Creek. This was a requirement of the pre-plat. The east half on the other side, that was previously vacated with the Fox Creek development back in 2000. There is on the trail plan a corridor shown along this right-of-way area. That trail corridor will remain as a planned trail corridor, and trail easement will be provided for this and recorded with the final plat. And then just picture of the vacation area itself. So this is a public hearing, and then ultimately we're requesting approval of resolution 2026-18.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Aye.
Right. Item. Item. Oh, sorry. I'll do it one time with the microphone on. Would anyone like to speak to this item? All right, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes.
Resolution.
Oh, yes, we
Yep,
need a resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2026-18, if I'm seeing that correctly.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to general business. Approve the promotion of Captain Jason Foster to the position of Deputy Chief of Police effective March 2nd, 2026.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is an extreme, great night for us, and obviously our police department, but to bring forth a brand new position to this police department, a new leadership position, it's a new day for us, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Tonight, I'm looking for a motion to approve the promotion of Captain Jason Foster to the position of Deputy Chief of Police effective March 2nd, 2026. An overview and background of this: the City Council approved the addition of a Deputy Chief of Police in the 2026 budget. We advertised for this position internally, which was tailored to the two current police captains. Interviews with the candidates were conducted with a panel consisting of internal department heads and a local police chief. Additionally, candidates participated in a comprehensive leadership assessment conducted by the police department's designated psychological firm. At the conclusion of the process, Captain Jason Foster was selected for this promotion. Both candidates in this process are extremely qualified, and we're fortunate to have high caliber senior leaders. Jason has been a police officer with the Rogers Police Department since January 2002 and was selected as the department's first police sergeant in 2004. During Jason's tenure, he has served in a variety of roles and assignments to include interim chief of police on 2 separate occasions. He was promoted to police captain in 2020 and has commanded both the patrol and services divisions. Captain Foster is widely respected amongst his peers both within and outside of our agency and has earned the respect of our community through his compassionate policing and competent leadership skills. Jason will be a tremendous
Started many years ago. Then for support.
Thank you.
So we will recognize Captain Foster's promotion later this year with an official badge pinning. And so, having said that, I'd like to recommend an approval of Captain.
Absolutely. Jason, thank you so much for your leadership. This is a very well-deserved promotion, so I will absolutely make a motion officially here, hold on, to approve the promotion to Deputy Chief of Police effective March 2nd.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. So, okay. All right. You don't have to sit here.
Yeah. Is there anybody on the street?
Oh, the
Look at the agenda before I.
place is gonna clear out now.
Take the names down.
Feel is easy going. He'll forget.
Yeah.
There's cake over there.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have to move on to regular business here. We will move to 7.2, continuation of the consideration of a site plan application by Bader Companies for proposed multifamily development at 21601 John Deere Lane, which is currently Willis Trucking property.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm going to go rather quickly through my slides. Obviously, we talked about this at fairly great lengths at the last meeting. So just for more general high level and for anyone in the audience that may be curious, this proposed concept development, there's a concept plan that was submitted in 2025 that was reviewed by the Planning Commission and then subsequently the City Council. Generally, the development, as you see before you and as proposed with the site plan, is consistent with the past concept plan. Since that point of the concept plan approval, there's been a few grants that have been awarded to this, specifically related to the environmental cleanup, as this is a redevelopment site of a previous industrial use. There is some environmental considerations when it comes to any new use within the property. And also just to note the Main Street Master Plan, we're going through the update process, as the council is well aware. This proposed development and was kind of incorporated into that concept master plan as we went through the process. However, the multifamily use on the subject property is also consistent with the past adopted concept plans and master plan for the downtown area. A little on the property itself, it's total of 4.61 acres, it's zoned as downtown mixed use, and it is also guided as mixed use. The downtown mixed use zoning district is exactly what it says, a mixed use zoning district that allows for a mix of commercial, office, and residential uses. The residential uses being high density residential as compared to some of the lower density options. The current use is heavy truck repair and service. That is the Willis Trucking use. So they were the owner operator of the site historically. And some of the adjacent uses are commercial and industrial. Across the street is a civic campus site. And then to the southwest is a railroad. And also just to note, the property directly across the railroad, the triangle piece that you see on the map with the industrial building that's currently sitting on it, that property is zoned and guided as R5, which is high density residential. So a little bit on the site plan itself, total of 181 units, 3 stories in height, which is 31 feet, H-shaped building with the edges of the property being utilized for surface parking, some additional underground parking, and then amenity features that include a pool and clubhouse, as well as some other areas that can still be programmed. And then internally, there's additional amenities such as co-working or work from home spaces, things of that nature. As mentioned, there are some environmental concerns primarily tied to the previous underground takes that were on site and some contamination that occurred from previous leaks. And the proposed development would have underground stormwater retention and treatment. A little on zoning, breaks down to with 181 units to 39.26 units per acre, which is slightly below the maximum the downtown zoning allowance has of 40 units per acre. It meets all of the code requirements for setbacks, meets the height limitations as defined in code, and as mentioned, meets the both current and previous master planning efforts. In total, this would actually reduce the amount of total impervious surface on the lot. A little on the breakdown of the actual unit counts. So you're looking at 40 units of alcove or studio, 70 units of 1 bedroom or 1 bedroom plus den, 62 units of 2 bedroom, 9 units of 3 beds. This is a market rate project, so it's all market rate units. There are no affordable units at 30% or 60% AMI, anything like that. As part of the process, the developer provided an anticipated number of units or individuals per unit, which worked out to about an average of 1.8. So that for development this side would be approximately 326 total individuals. It lists on the screen primarily adults, and this is mostly based on the unit breakdown of primarily being studio or 1 bedroom units. In total, there's 374 total parking spaces that are proposed, 209 of which would be enclosed spaces. This exceeds our code requirements for total number of parking stalls. The developer did submit a traffic study as part of their application. This is with the assumption of a 2028 completion date, which would be following the completion of the Fletcher bypass project that's currently underway. This proposed development would have approximately 1,124 daily trips. At the last meeting, the traffic consultant did speak on this item. He is here again tonight, should you have any direct questions related to that. But reviewing the traffic study, it's pretty minimal impacts to the nearby intersections, as you'll see by the level of service table that's on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. It also, just to denote, the traffic study does not include a future potential John Deere to industrial connection because the timing of that is currently still unknown. Landscaping, it does meet all of our code requirements corresponding to landscaping, with a bulk majority of the trees focused on the John Deere Lane portion, the front of the building. This really is consistent with what we're going for from the Main Street Master Plan and creating a future pedestrian corridor running along that roadway. Then the architecture, I'll just go to the more conceptual renderings. It's a mix of brick and fiber cement panels, with the brick being really focused on the John Deere side. And that's a really push from a staff level to kind of keep that consistency with the downtown area. The incorporation of the brick from the most visible point from the public perspective. So the various views that you see are the top right would be, if you're looking at it from what would be the police, future police location. A little on the downtown vision, and this was part of the Main Street Master Plan as well as previous downtown master plans that were done. Redevelopment of industrial areas, so really seeking to remove the current industrial uses from Main Street and create more of a vibrant Main Street that's walkable. Removal of substandard buildings. There was a blight determination that was completed for this property, which did in fact find that the existing building on site is deemed as substandard. Integration of housing, and this is really to support the commercial uses and really try to emphasize commercial uses within the Main Street. Aligning the architecture, and then, as mentioned, creating a walkable area. This was reviewed at the February 2nd Planning Commission, which had general support. There was one clarifying question about where trash would be kept In the end, they did unanimously recommend for approval of the proposed site plan with an additional recommendation for the city council to consider allowing for up to 25 of the surface parking spaces to be shown as proof of parking rather than to be actually constructed. This was reviewed at the February 20th meeting for the city council, which it was tabled at that time. And the primary discussions were related to traffic. There is a recommended action on your screen in front of you. Also, just a note, at each of your seats, there was a letter of support from a nearby business. So you all have that. The individual asset I share with the council, so I want to be sure that I print it off and share it with you all. With that, I can stand for any questions that you may have for staff, and there's also numerous representatives from the developer should you have specific questions for them.
No questions. I think it's good for, I think it's a good fit for the space, for the purpose that we're trying to achieve downtown. We talk about density a lot. We're forced into some formula by the Met Council, and I think it's a good space to get it, and a pretty attractive building put forward. I'm in favor. And I'm confident that the John Deere Lane changes are not too far behind us or in front of us.
I guess I have to echo Mark's approval of this project. I think this would be a win-win, getting more people downtown for businesses that are downtown. And it would also give us an opportunity to use some creative financing to see if we can get John Deere Drive to come out on industrial. I think that would enhance the opportunity for further development in that area. So I come out in favor of this also.
I would like to echo that as well. I thought about this a lot in the last few days, and our top priorities are to revitalize Main Street and be business friendly. And so bringing people to Main Street is important so that we don't lose the businesses we put down there. And then, just getting the, putting improved buildings down there where there's not great, like the Willis Trucking right now is not a great, it doesn't meet our plan, and this would be an improvement on that. So I also support it.
I'm probably still sitting at where I was before, but that's okay.
Yeah, I guess I would just weigh in too. I think bottom line, consistent with what we've been talking about in the downtown area, and I think it supports the development we want to see down there and the businesses that have already invested down there. I'd like to see more of that. And this is just a positive step in that direction. I think it's a good fit for the space and so forth. So, yep, I support it as well.
Jim, did you have a question?
Sure that the console traffic, we're gonna have cars jammed up there on the one places away or intersections away from this. Look,
Yeah, and so did you get a chance to look at it? The traffic study?
well,
Okay. So from what we discussed the last time, that has been my issue. However, Fletcher bypass will be done, and then this John Deere connection will also give a secondary place near there to get off of Main Street. And so I'm comfortable with it. I talked to Doran recently about coming in and out of that place. It's not going to be like a crazy in and out constantly all day long. There's not that many people that will be in that apartment that are gonna be coming in and out all day. So I think I'm comfortable with the traffic at this point. After talking to many people about it, just to talk it out, so. It won't be perfect, Jim, but we do need to bring people to the Main Street in order to keep those businesses alive.
And the one thing you have to realize, Jim, is it's not like a place of employment where everybody's leaving or coming at one time. They're going to be all spread out during the day.
Yeah. The elections, you can file in May, so I'll talk to you then. You can file for office. So you can vote. All right, any other questions or comments?
I would go ahead and make a motion to approve resolution 2026-12.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, we have 4 for it, 1 against. That motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Now we will move on to items related to City Project 2406. Except, this is for the Rogers Activity Center expansion.
Madam Mayor, council members, this is a project we're all intimately familiar with, but we have two main actions for you to consider tonight. One is to accept the bids for the project and to approve AIA document A133 Exhibit A, which is a guaranteed maximum price from our contractor, RJM Construction, and to approve a professional services agreement with American Engineering and Testing, or AET, for special inspections. I'll give you a little background on the project. The original rack was built in 2006. And for about the last 2 years, the city council, staff, and Rogers Youth Hockey have been discussing possibility of adding a second sheet of ice. RYHA has committed significant capital contributions towards the project. The city council directed us to develop a term sheet and negotiate that with Rogers Youth Hockey. And on May 24th of 2024, that term sheet was approved and things progressed from there. One of the things we had in the term sheet was that it said this term sheet is not binding until a definitive memorandum of agreement is approved by the city and executed by both parties. So in the fall of 2024, we issued an RFP for architectural and engineering services for the rack expansion. The city council approved a professional services agreement with HTG Architects in September of 2024. And according to that term sheet, RYHA funded all of that work that HTG and their consulting engineer did. And they've been continuing to fund those costs as well. In September 2023 or 2025 at a budget workshop, the city council discussed new funding options for the rink expansion. The city agreed to proceed with the rink expansion with the additional city funds of park dedication and naming rights to cover the financing agreement or financing gap. Staff then developed a memorandum of agreement with RYHA, and that MOA had many of the same provisions as the original term sheet. Some of the highlights of that MOA, the term was 20 years. It had a provision to extend it up to an additional 10 years. RYHA agreed to upfront $2 million for the engineering and architecture work, and then continue $500,000 a year contribution for the next 20 years for a total of $10 million. According to that memorandum of agreement, we had a cost figure that showed all the costs and the funding sources. And at the time
The initial cost was $16.7 million. And that if there was any shortfalls in the funding sources or more costs, that RYHA would fund those additional costs either through extending their $500,000 a year contributions or an additional upfront contribution. And the agreement is binding and contains dispute resolution provisions. The city would provide the land for the rack expansion. We would contribute $2 million to the ice plant, continue with the current rack levy of $475,000 a year. For the life of the bond, $120,000 per year towards capital debt for a total of $2.4 million over the life of the debt. We'd also contribute naming rights for the entire facility, the True Stone Center, including Rink 1 and the rink expansion, and the Health Partners Fieldhouse at an estimated $3.18 million. We would also construct the connection or the link between the new rink and the turf facility. That would be funded with part dedication and up to an additional $1.8 million of part dedication to fill a funding gap. Again, RYHA would provide funding for the rink expansion beyond what the city would provide. They would be responsible for the costs above the most recent anticipated project costs by RJM. That cash contribution of $2 million and then $5 million or $500,000 a year for 20 years. And then they've been paying the design and engineering. That agreement was approved by the City Council on October 14th of 2025. And here's what that financial term sheet looked like at the time. And you see the $16 million figure up on the top. That excluded the finishing out of the varsity girls locker room. On February 25th, the City Council authorized the solicitation of construction manager at risk proposals for the rack expansion. We issued that in March. It was issued to 8 contractors, 3 of which were locally based. 2 of those chose not to propose, as did Kraus Anderson. We did get 4 proposals, and RJM was ultimately selected by the City Council for the construction manager. A little background on the rink. I don't know if you can see my cursor on there or not, but this orange down in the lower left-hand corner is the link between the turf and the ice facility. Have the sheet of ice, some locker rooms, a Zamboni room, the ice plant. Then up here in the upper right-hand corner is the girls' varsity and junior varsity locker rooms. The second floor has a meeting room, RYHA office, and dry land training along with some restrooms. And here's some graphics of what it'll look like, a fairly modest building. This is the link between the 2 facilities. This is some interior perspectives. So on February 3rd of this year, RJM Construction opened the bids, and they vetted all of the bids to make sure that all of the scopes were covered. We did bid with 6 alternates. One was a deduct to eliminate the ammonia cooling system. I think Mr. Bauer would say that that's probably not a good deduct to take. We had an alternate to do ceiling acoustics up in the meeting room for an additional roughly $9,000. The base bid included infrared heaters in the spectator area. The girls' locker room finishes were a deduct of $221,000. That would just leave it as a shell. There was some concern about needing some subsurface drainage, so we included that as an alternate. And then demoing the existing ice plant room was an additional $61,000. We're recommending that alternates 2, 5, and 6 be accepted with the base bid. The alternate 1, again, was a deduct to use something other than ammonia, but it would certainly mean longer-term maintenance and the possibility that it might be eliminated as an option. Acoustical ceiling tiles, I think, should be added as well. I think we should leave the infrared heaters in there as well, and we can always eliminate them later if we don't find that we need them. The base bid, again, included finishing the varsity girls' locker room. We believe it should be finished at this time because doing it at a later date would likely cost more money, and we have some history with doing that on rink 1. Drain tile, I'm suggesting that we leave that in and eliminate it if it's not needed. And we believe that decommissioning and demolition of the existing refrigerant room should be included. We did have recent discussions with the Rogers Royals Face-Off Boosters Club and ISD 728 about covering the costs of the girls' varsity locker room. And as of Friday afternoon, the Booster Club recommitted their $400,000 contribution to the locker room. And ISD 728 late Friday afternoon committed $420,000 for the girls' varsity locker room and some upgrades to the boys' varsity locker room in rink 1. So some of the areas where the bids varied from the original estimate that was used in the original agreement. Precast came in at $200,000 more. That's very volatile pricing in that particular item, as it was for steel that came in at $256,000 higher. Carpentry and casework came in at $470,000, but if you recall, we excluded that the first time in the estimate. That's mostly the girls' varsity locker room. Painting came in higher. The ice plant came in higher. But we did remove the escalation and contingencies. And then we did get our SAC determination from the Met Council, and that came in at almost twice what we had anticipated. So the total project construction cost for this project is $16,204,371 based on the low bids that RJM received. And that includes their fee as well, which is the project supervision, allowances, safety, project management, contingency, and insurance. This is the guaranteed maximum price that is reflected in the AIA document that is on your agenda this evening. And that Exhibit A becomes part of the original agreement that the City Council originally approved with RJM Construction. The total estimated project cost is now $17,620,444, including our alternates 2, 5, and 6, building permit fees, SAC and WAC, design and other fees and testing. So we have revised the Exhibit B, but it was done so before we had the commitments from the Booster Club and the school district. So right now it's in your staff report and in your packet, and as shown on the screen is not quite correct. And Bridget is in the process of updating that with the new contributions. This simply showed that there were going to need to be additional contributions from the Booster Club or ISD and from RYHA. The other item on your agenda this evening is a special inspections professional services agreement. We solicited proposals from 4 testing companies for the required special inspections. Braun Intertech and Terracon did not respond. WSB responded, but their proposal was $62,150. And AET's proposal was $30,491. RJM and staff discussed the proposals. They were comparable, however, based on the fee AET was selected. I will point out that they have performed special inspections for the turf facility site prep, the turf facility building, the rack expansion soil borings, and Fire Station 2, and their work has been more than acceptable. They're very responsive and have an on-site laboratory in their office in Albertville. I'd be remiss if I didn't issue a few thank yous because there's been a lot of people involved in this project. Obviously, RYHA, their president Nate Moen is here, the Face Off Booster Club, ISD 728, HTG Architects and Anderson Engineering, AET, RJM Construction, who has a representative here this evening. And the city council, obviously, you've been looking at this project for a long time, probably longer than I've been here. The facilities task force and the arena commission, and then pretty much everybody on city staff that's sitting over here has been involved in this project as well. So it's a big thank you for that to them. And with that, the recommended actions are on the screen for you to consider. And I can stand for any questions.
I have a question for Bridget. We had a couple of different rates on that sheet. Where are we at these days?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, I would say I would hope we're looking towards the lower end, the 3.5% to 4%. Obviously, we'll have to wait until a future bond sale this spring, summer before we fully know that, but yes.
I guess the only one other question, projects often have necessary changes and change orders and things like that. Is our overall budget set up? Do we have some contingency in there? And or if something becomes more than what we might have, that's where we get back to the terms of the agreement where risk is more off the city and on others.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and council members, yes, there is contingency built in. In this form of contracting, much of the risk is placed upon the contractor. All the subcontractors are contracted directly with RJM Construction, not with the city. And I should introduce Isaac Lindberg from RJM Construction representing their company.
So you're saying all the pressure's on Isaac?
So I see here.
So then if there is like cost increases due to change orders, then that's coming from the construction management company? Is that what you're saying, or?
Madam Mayor, council members, there can be changes in conditions that would be a negotiated change order.
Okay.
But many of the other risks are on them as the contracting agent.
Okay. And is there any portions that will remain unfinished then? Or is it all going to be completely finished?
Madam Mayor, council members, the entire facility will be finished.
Great, thank you.
So the additional contributions required by MOA, is that where the school district, the last minute funding would go, is towards that gap right there?
Madam Mayor, council members, some of it would go towards that gap. Some of it will go towards rink 1 to finish, upgrade the boys' locker room.
Gotcha.
I guess I have one question for the Hockey Association. Are you comfortable with the additional funds?
Madam Mayor, council members, we haven't updated the funding spreadsheet yet with the school district's contribution. But as of before that change, that gap was.
I have the updated exhibit B. So the gap before the change for the additional contribution for the school district, it was looking at 1.4 million. So we should be able to reduce that by a couple $100,000. So it's not going up, it will go down from the original time that you've seen it after the bids. Yep. So the money needed today, the original Rogers Youth Hockey Association contribution was like 2 million. They've contributed some of that prior to this, and then annual contributions of 500,000 per year. So as the MOA had stated, RYHA would be responsible for changes in increased costs or adjustments due to changes in funding sources. So that additional, I would be like 1.38 million
Over time.
over time. So that would be over the 20 years, over 500,000 a year, and it can be paid additionally as the association has it or as extended contributions past the 20 years. The one thing that I would note is if we're bonding, or I would propose bonding for this over 20 years, meaning if the contributions come in after the 20 years, the city would be responsible for upfronting that money to make those bond payments and getting paid back at a later date.
But we would still be made whole with the overage.
Correct.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
You're so
We
close.
understand how much sweat equity you guys are putting into this, and we appreciate that, and without it, we couldn't do this project.
Wow. So Dorn, you mentioned 2 years we've been working on this. I'm pretty sure I jumped on the arena commission when I started 12 years ago. And I mean, I just can't say enough about how we've brought both ends to the middle and the participation by RYHA. It's nice to see the school district come in. But I don't know. I'd venture to guess this is kind of an unprecedented project in Minnesota, the way all these funding pieces have come in together, and I'm just pleased to see it get to this point.
Yeah, this is really exciting, and RYHA, I mean, you guys have been such a great partner. We appreciate that you've pushed us to this point so we could do this.
Well, and the work too, Mike, that, was done on naming rights and really kind of shaking the cushions of the couch and finding ways to get here has
Yeah.
been a great team effort.
Mighty Ducks grant. There's been a lot of things, so we appreciate you all for getting us here.
I think I'll make a motion to accept bids. Get new contacts. For Rogers Activity Center expansion, city project number 2406, and approve the AIA document A133-2019 Exhibit A, guaranteed maximum price amendment with RJM Construction as the city's construction manager at risk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
I'll take that second one as well. I'll make a motion to approve professional services agreement for special inspections with American Engineering and Testing for the rack expansion, city project number 2406.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes as well. Thank you, everyone.
It's good to see my pull tab money's going towards something.
Just one quick note in terms of timing, I just checked with Mike. We'll be coming up on the 20-year anniversary of the rack next year, basically this time next year, right? January of 2007. So almost 20 years to the year by the time this is finished up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I'm glad we can make it work.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so many big moments today.
Yeah, that's a good start.
All right. Consideration of a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning site plan, preliminary plat and final plat. Request by Opinion Development corresponding to a proposed industrial development at 20061 Vevea Road.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor and council members. The item before you is a request from Apiden for preliminary final plat, rezoning, comp plan amendment, and site plan. So a little bit on kind of the discretionary piece of this. Rezoning and comp plan amendments are kind of the highest discretion items that the city council has, while site plans are a little bit lower. So as you get to the recommended motions, they're in order for how it should be kind of acted upon. A little bit on the property itself. The VV family currently owns this. There is a combination of a few different siblings that are under the ownership for it. The total size, and as you see on your screen, it kind of combines what looks like two distinct parcels, but they're unplatted parcels. So it all is within one PID and one actual legal parcel. Total of 17 acres in a combination of both. The development property is on the north side of Rogers Drive, which is about 11 acres. It is currently zoned as RC, which is our Regional Employment Center District and Mixed Use District. It's guided as commercial, and it's currently being used for agricultural and residential. So on the northeast side of the property, there is a single-family home that is currently on that site. There is also a billboard, and I'll kind of get to the billboard component of that later in the slide. The proposed use is a light industrial speculative development. So speculative development is just one that doesn't have an identified end user for it. Some of the adjacent uses include residential to the east. These properties, it should just be noted, are all zoned and guided the same currently. So they are not seen as R2 or a single family district. These are kind of geared for potential future redevelopment. To the north is commercial, which is where Cabela's is located. To the south is industrial, and then to the west is I-94. But once you cross that is more industrial properties with, you can kind of see on the screen, there's I-State right there as well. So a little on the plat itself. They are only looking to plat at this time the northern portion, which is really tied to the development piece. As you'll see, the proposed development kind of sits on the main piece that is currently being used as agricultural purposes. The single family home is shown on the north side, which is on Vevea Lane. And this proposed plat would really create two lots. Lot 1 would be 9 acres, which would encompass the development property. Lot 2 would be the single family home, which they would carve out, and it would remain as a residential use and retained by the seller of the property. Also with the plat, it does fix some current right-of-way areas, and there's, when the roadway went through, there's really on the south side of the property some issues with how the right-of-way show, and so it'd clean all of that up as well. As you'll see in the final plat, it is consistent with the preliminary plat. The rezoning request is looking at taking the existing property from RC and rezoning it as GI, which is our industrial. And I will also just note, as you see, the southern side, the south side of Rogers Drive, which is also owned by that family, which is not platted at this time. The proposed developer and the applicant tonight does have an option request for that property in the future as well. The comp plan request would take the property from guided as commercial to guided as industrial, which is consistent with the rezoning request. As part of the comp plan request, obviously the Met Council has to be the final approval. Should the City Council do approval tonight, based on preliminary feedback received by our sector representative, they did note that they didn't have any significant concerns with it. Also, just to note, as the council's aware, we're moving into the 2050 plan here, beginning within the next few months. I believe it's in either the next agenda or the following agenda. We'll have our consultant selection for it. This area is one from a staff perspective, we're looking at exploring more, mostly due to, I think it's in a future slide, some of the commercial challenges that are presented at this site. So with the rezoning and comp plan amendment, this would be post-plat recording. Obviously, they're splitting the parcels and only doing the rezoning and re-guidance for one of the pieces, so the plat would have to go first. It is subject, as mentioned, to the Met Council's final approval. It is, and as mentioned, it's kind of consistent with our overall 2050 expectations. And reasons why, from a staff perspective, the shift from commercial to industrial kind of makes sense is the first being immediate traffic volumes. One of the key items for commercial viability is immediate traffic, not necessarily 94. Visibility is great, but the actual traffic volumes on the directly abutting street. The parcel size is relatively large, either side of Rogers Drive, and you're not seeing a lot of large commercial users. Obviously, a Cabela's is great, a destination type use is really great, but those are pretty few and far between to actually get to. The access, obviously, there's a distance to get to either the Dayton Parkway interchange or to 101 to get to 94. The market conditions, as mentioned, commercials a little bit more challenging today. And then a lack of available industrial properties within the community. We don't have a ton of large industrial properties left within the community, just a handful. And technically two of those sold within the past year. So looking at the site plan itself, the proposed building is 117,000 square feet in total size. It would front Rogers Drive, so rear face loading docks. The total height would be 35, which is under the code maximum in either the RC or GI district. Parking would be mostly in the front and side. There is some proof of parking shown on the next slide or future slide that I'll kind of go into further. A minor wetland fill on the north side of the development, and then it would meet all of the required setbacks for the GI district. As mentioned, the existing single-family home on the northeast side would remain, and the billboard, which is currently on the site, which is, if I can get my little highlighter to work, about in this location, would be removed. And that is a component that has pre-existing agreements for that upon development, those billboards would have to be removed. And there's existing utilities that run along Rogers Drive, so it would tap into existing utilities, and there's not a need to do an extension of our public lines. So as mentioned, parking access, there's 124 total exterior parking stalls with 40 additional shown as proof of parking. That's really dependent on the user. Obviously, higher finish manufacturing users could potentially need more parking. So the proof of parking shown in the rear of the building could accommodate the 40 additional stalls. So that's dependent on the user. If one has a higher finish with less need of dock space, they can convert that area into passenger vehicle parking. ADA spaces would be in the front near the main entrances, and then there would be 2 access points off of Rogers Drive. One shown on the south side of the property and one on the west side of the property. Per staff direction, there is no direct connection to Vevea Road to the north. That's currently only serving, I think it's 5 homes, single-family homes, and it's a rather unimproved roadway, so we want to ensure that no trucks were actually going onto that specific roadway. For the landscaping, there's 30 new overstory trees and 23 new evergreen trees. A lot of what you'll see for new trees that would be planted really are focused along that area where there is residential. So on the northeast portion, to do some additional screening per our code, we have the screening requirements. So really trying to get the evergreen trees to provide that buffer between the two. So for stormwater, there's a few different stormwater retention areas. One, really, there's 2 different holding areas in the north, one to the south, and then a ditch that runs along the side. For the architecture, and I think I have a rendering here, it's primarily tip-up paneling with some wood finish accents that would really be geared towards those main entrances. It's really trying to highlight the entrance point. So there would be kind of this wood finish here in the middle and then on the other side with varying different grays being utilized and then some bump outs in the roof line and facade to break up the overall massing of the building. A public hearing was held at the February 2nd Planning Commission. One individual spoke who is adjacent. He's one of the individuals that owns one of the single family homes along Vevea Road. It was more clarification on what that means for his property. It wasn't in favor or against the development, more just asking questions on it. In the end, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of all the different requests, which are shown on this slide. So there's 4 different requested actions for the item. There are representatives here for the applicant here tonight, should you have any direct questions for them. Otherwise, I can answer any questions for staff.
Brett, the only question I have is going back to the residential. With the trailers being parked on that side, that's going to be a noise issue as far as I can see. How many houses will that affect?
There is, I can go back to the image here. There's a total of 4 homes, including the one that the seller owns. So 3 additional homes besides that one.
Besides the seller of this property? And the seller of the property is the closest house, I assume?
Correct.
Okay. So then he knows what he's getting into.
Yep. And as part of the public hearing process, we do our traditional notification, which encompassed all of the different homes along that street.
Okay, thank you.
And Brett, there was like landscape screening kind of in the corner too. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor and Council, that is correct. So the big majority of the landscaping really is along Vevea Road and then extends down and follows this property line. So it's really meant to screen as much as you can, not just screening the visually, but also the noise impacts. So the evergreen trees, and that was a big push from a staff perspective and what we've talked about at previous industrial developments as well, having the evergreen trees so they maintain that year-round consistency for the screening. But there is some general landscaping really throughout the site, but the vast majority focus is on this north side.
And how many docks are in the back?
Madam Mayor and Council, I'd have to count the exact number. It's quite a few, but in the end, it's going to be very user specific. Once they have an identified user, they can punch out some of the more. I would defer to the applicant if they know the exact number. But if it's a higher manufacturing finish, they're not going to build the docks should they not be utilized, and then that area would just be used for parking. And I will also, just to note on kind of the piece that really goes with the screening component, the lighting that would go with that. There's not direct parking freestanding lights, it's building mounted lights for this area. So that should eliminate some of the visual impacts. I think there's one light pole on the southeast side, but primarily just building lights.
You're talking about, and generally building lights are trying to cast out.
Yeah, Madam.
We want.
Yep.
Shoebox style downcast.
Yep, Madam Mayor and Council. So if you're looking at your resolution for the site plan, condition number 9 directly correlates to the building mounted lights. So it reads, the building mount lights on the rear of the building shall be at a height or design to ensure the light pack has limited visibility from adjacent residential properties, giving us more of that discretion, really following the Cope property and the conversations we had on that one, to have some staff discretion to work to have limited visibility, or kind of in that case, how we had this overall structure kind of hide that light pack.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-13.
Oh, second.
Aye.
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 All right, that motion passes.
I'll also move to approve resolution 2026-14.
Oh, second on that.
Aye.
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 Do you want me to do the other two?
Yeah.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2026-03.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. And I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-15.
I'll second that as well,
All right,
yes.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Consider adopting ordinance 20-4. 5-80 related to accessories.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You've made it to the most exciting part of the agenda today. So, I'll keep the sort of background relatively brief here. I don't have a presentation. You've got the ordinance amendment draft in front of you. The staff and commission and city council, we've had a few directions as far as adopting, readopting, or amending different parts of the code, including accessory structures and fences. Fences is more of a staff-driven item. We've had some recent changes in the past few years as far as what kind of inspections we're doing. Fences, we haven't done final inspections. We've done site plan review as far as residential permitting, but not site inspections. Which was part of a change, I think, before I got here, before 2023, or right around the beginning of that year. And then most recently, with the fee schedule change that we did earlier this year, was removing that fee altogether and not permitting fences at all. So now we've got to change the fence ordinance to align with what we want to do, which is to not require permits for fences, which means we're looking at relaxing those standards. There are some issues when we are doing inspections on fences, generally speaking. We don't want to go into a situation where we're acting as a possible surveyor when no one here is licensed to survey property lines. So there are issues regarding inspections and how they're done generally. And if you don't have a 7-foot tall fence, which isn't allowed in residential areas anyways, there aren't any footing inspections. So someone's out there looking at where the fence is ultimately placed and whether or not it's constructed well. So we haven't done that in several years. And then ultimately, when it comes to fences, they fall down to a civil dispute between neighbors, right? So that when you're building the fences, some of the most difficult times are when fences go up, right? So where there are a decent number of civil disputes that happen, even beyond what staff sees, but we do see frequent calls about that kind of thing. So ultimately, fences come down to knowing where the property lines are, and ultimately that owner needs to be responsible for placing that fence in the manner they need to place it. The accessory structures one was in response to the number of variances we received, right? So we're looking at amendments generally when there are changes in technology, like with the sign stuff or updating very outdated sections. Accessory structures isn't super outdated, but there's just changes in sort of perspectives as far as sizes of outbuildings that we want to allow in the city of Rogers. So the changes proposed tonight are in response to variances that we received that have been approved to increase either the number and or the size of outbuildings allowed on typically on rural residential areas. So what you have in front of you tonight, generally speaking, is the major changes that you're looking at in accessory structures are in relation to the size tables in the ag and R1 district. The Planning Commission reviewed this at the beginning of the month here. They did have some clarifications that they went through, as well as the initial draft had matching tables in the ag district in R1. When they got further on into reviewing the R1 area, they did request a reduction in size from the proposed for R1 for acreages over five acres and above. There's a slight reduction there. I went down to 1.4% of the base acreage in that table. So that's where there's a difference between the ag and the R1. And going from basically in the ag, when you get to 5 acres, it's 1.5% of that base acreage. And then going down to 1.4, there is a decent amount of change in that. So you go from 5, you go down to from 3,200 to 3,000. And then if you can just follow along in the table to see where that shakes out. Other changes include for properties in the R1 or ag properties that if you're under 3 acres, the number increased from 1 to 2, and then above 3 acres, the number allowed to 3 accessory structures. There's been clarifications as it pertains to how we determine lot size. So currently, if you have wetlands, you would remove that acreage, and then it would drop the allowable down. And a lot of properties have maybe a quarter of the property could be wetland, so which has an impact on the amount of allotment you get. We remove that part of the language. So even if you have wetlands, if you have 5 acres gross, you've got 5 acres that you can have that allotment. A reduction of inconsistencies, and then some slight changes in regards to attached garages and how that would work out and more in the urban residential districts. And then a note that the commission did with their requested in reducing the percentage, they did want to include the ability to increase that up to 2% with a conditional use permit. And then anything over that would require a variance. When it comes to variances, I mean, we can improve a variance, and it's ultimately sort of how you see that practical difficulties argument. It gets challenging when it's an owner who just wants a larger outbuilding, and then there's no real practical difficulties. So having a CUP, in my mind, is a better route to go for some of that. And then if you have any questions, we can go through them, starting with outbuildings and going down the fences as well. So you've got a big document in front of you. I apologize. So
I just
So
have a question on what was the driving factor for reducing.
for reducing,
Yeah,
so they felt that
like a pretty minor reduction.
it was at the meeting, I had said it was a 2%, that the base acreage was 2% of the base acreage. But when I got down to 5 acres, I had been reducing that percentage to 1.5. The motion was to reduce it to 1.5 when it was already at 1.5, so that's why I reduced it to 1.4. I think the view of the commission was that didn't know if there was enough there for the variances that received to increase the amount that much to the same as what the ag table was, which is sort of where they sat with that. I mean, I think they thought the increase was a little bit too high for the R1 districts as initially proposed. With the caveat that if they wanted more, they would go through a conditional use permit process for that.
I had lots of questions.
Okay. Go
Um,
for it.
I emailed them to Alec ahead of time, so he's prepared.
I'm prepared.
So it'll be quick, hopefully. So there was mention of removing wetlands from the calculation for like ag and R1, but the urban lots, it didn't sound like it was for,
No, so the urban lots didn't have that specific language in that section.
and I think
So
I would like to kind of consider that for those as well, but I'd like to hear some feedback from others on that. Because I'm open to discussion on it for like if a 1 acre lot has a quarter of that acre is wetland, would you say that you couldn't consider that in the calculation? Or personally, I lean towards allowing them to say they have the full acre for their outlet or for their accessory.
But that's the way I
calculation.
interpreted it.
So it comes down to interpretation. And if I were to receive a permit for R2 with this proposed, and they were over 2 acres, I would go off of basically R1, probably the R1 requirements and how we would calculate that lot. The urban residential district language already doesn't include that sort of calculation. So if you're in an R2 district, we don't have a lot sizes are determined this way. So when I'm looking at, because they just have a 528 square feet is what you get right now. So they don't have that lot calculation. So in my mind, you may not really need to re-include that language further down, but we certainly could to just make sure it's known that if you have more than 2 acres, that is also included, that not only is the allotment for the R2 over 2 acres for the outbuilding R1, but also generally just that section would just apply. So we can make some further clarification that beyond just the building size, it is also the other requirements in the
So-
R1 section.
Okay, so then that would apply for anything 2 acres or above.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to do it the same as R1
Okay.
for that. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I'm
I think
not following. My
So-
Civic Plus isn't working for me, so I didn't see the entire document.
there are a couple other sections where we could beef up the language where the R2, because the intent with, and this was back, I don't remember what year it was when that change was when we went through the rezoning and everything in 2020, stuff got placed in the R2, that initial ad to have 2 acres or more, just have the same allotment as R1, didn't necessarily include anything beyond just the size of the outbuilding. So there may have been other requirements in the R1 that were less strict than in the urban residential district standards. So we can certainly clarify that language to make sure it's clear that anything that applies to an R1 property also applies to an R2 property over 2 acres.
Yeah, I'd like that because a lot of those the R1 acre or plats got rezoned as R2 and then they lost a lot of their ability to do stuff. Let's see. And then the other question that I think should be kind of discussed is the whole, will accessory buildings in the front or side yard be allowed for R1? And what about R2 properties over 2 acres?
Yep. So right now, the location of buildings hasn't changed. So if you're in the R1 district, you have to place the building in the rear yard unless you're over 5 acres, and then you can place it in the front. Or unless you're in the shoreline district and have shoreline, then you can also place that in the front. In the R2 district, it doesn't include the language about placement. So that placement language, so the setback language is in another district or another code section. So there's some of that placement language in this section, but there's in the R1 district standards 125-55 is where most of the setback standards exist for the districts. So some of the shoreline language about placement is in this accessory structures section. But the bulk of those performance, those setback standards are in a different area.
And the reason I bring it up is I've seen a lot of R1 properties have their garage kind of at a like 120-degree angle off. It's not straight 90, but it's angled with the driveway doing a split. I've also seen it where they're 90 degrees off. So they're not always in the rear yard. Sometimes they're in the front. And I don't know if we're defining it at 2 acres or above versus 5, if that makes a difference. And then there's also some of our developments coming in are weird geometries for even the urban lots, where it gets a little tougher. Those fill-in lots are kind of a strange geometry, and so if you want an accessory building, you can put it in, if there's no room in the rear. And I get the concept. It has to do with curb appeal, right? You don't want a ton of buildings in front. So I was kind of wondering what others thought of that.
Do you want to let people do that?
I was thinking, yeah, because I've seen it.
Because, well, the garage is different, right, Alec? I mean,
But if it's not attached, it's an
Garage is-
accessory building.
So an accessory structure is just a separate ancillary structure on the property, not attached. Unattached accessory structures, the typical is placement in the rear yard.
right, but there's a difference to me on a detached garage and then any additional accessory structure beyond a detached garage.
They
I mean,
define the same.
A detached garage would be adjacent to a driveway, which can sometimes be in the front.
The way the code currently reads is not all the time unless you're over 5 acres. Basically, right? So that language isn't there. So we don't really have a, it's not defined differently whether it's used for personal vehicles and detached or just a hobby shop and detached.
And if they wanted to do that, say you've got a house with no garage at all, and they want to build a garage adjacent to their driveway, they do it through CUP.
Or they could attach it to their house.
You could attach it to the house
Yeah, that comes with expense.
with
Yep.
expense, right? So could be that it could require variance depending on the situation.
Setbacks.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep,
you still have
the bigger
setbacks. I mean,
ones.
We don't.
I'm just in favor. I'm happy with the CUP tool
Okay.
because it allows you to, I mean, any of them really, a variance too, allows you to just look at the circumstances of the property. And you can make decisions based on what you're seeing in this particular individual circumstance, decisions on that. I've always been a big fan of that. I don't,
There added cost with CUP.
Yep, there's an application fee and escrow involved with a conditional use permit. If the general opinion is if an accessory structure, it could be just trying to think, if you want to sort of have a separation between a shed, like a 200 square foot shed, and then a detached garage, you could just have it be for over X number of square feet, you have to meet the front yard setback, and it could be placed in the side yard.
yeah, and I don't want to look for all these obscure scenarios, but that's one that just sticks out to me that,
Yeah, that was pretty common, actually. Driveway split.
yeah.
Um,
We
But
get the concept that the things that are happening all the time, we
mhm.
should build into the code and not require them to go through a process, right? I mean, that's the
Yep.
idea.
That's the
Mhm.
idea. If you're seeing a lot of variances, you probably need to fix the code.
Right.
Especially if they're the same type of variance.
And then I had a question about, it says a site plan submitted for all accessory structures. So my question was, does this include movable structures and sheds built from kits?
So in practice, it wouldn't, since if we don't require a permit for anything less than 200 square feet, we don't see a site plan. Anything that requires a building permit, we would see that site plan. And just because it doesn't require a permit doesn't mean you don't have to follow zoning, right? So even if it's less than 200 square feet, you still need to meet the setbacks.
Okay.
Okay. And in table 22, I was wondering if the minimum dimension, or if the dimensions listed for eaves and overhang are minimums, or if they're like the only allowed values.
It's, so that's table to 122, sort of further down in the code, that has, the table is titled sidewall restrictions.
Okay, so it's for
in
the
it-
sidewall.
And it reads to me like you can have either 10-foot sidewalls or 12-foot sidewalls.
But then it lists the eave side.
And then there's an eve size and an overhang requirement for those types of sidewalls. So it doesn't, to me, it reads, it's confusing, right? It doesn't really allow for anything above that. You still have overall height requirements built into the code, either, I think in the R1, don't quote me on, it's in a different section, but it's 30 feet tall or no taller than the home, which is tall. It's a tall building. But then now you have restriction on sidewall height, so it may not allow for, say, a large camper to be pulled in, because it's not a 14-foot.
But
Okay.
you can get that with CUP.
Right, a CUP could be done to increase the height.
The wall height. That's what I had.
I mean, I would interpret it that way, that, hey, I need a taller building for this specific purpose.
And then for the R2, 1.9 acres or less, I was going to suggest 625 square feet for the size versus, I think it was 528 listed. And the reason was just so that boat trailers without a swinging hitch, campers, storage, just so that you can allot for some of that stuff to fit in there easily. So it's not much of an increase.
Where is that one?
3J,
Say it again.
3J.
So it's in the urban residential district section.
It should be highlighted too.
Is it, I mean, that's still less than half of what you can do with a 2 acre. $600.
Yeah, unless you wanted to go larger. But I was just kind of looking at. Well, you had 1.99 acres.
Trying to visualize that.
25 by 25 is, but usually they'd be a little longer than wide.
Yeah.
Feedback, thoughts?
What were the two numbers you said? You were-
Currently, I think it's, I'd have to, I think it was 528, but let me look it up. Okay, so currently it's 528. I suggest raising it to 625.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
That makes sense.
Okay.
And just to know, I know Councilmember Anga had another question about, there was one of the requirements in here was, it's in the same section, and it's under 3D. No accessory structure shall exceed 10% of the available rear yard measured from the rear of the residence, extending in straight lines to the side lot line, and depending, that's a very, I don't know what the point of that part is. And if you're gonna be increasing the square footage, it may cause issues with properties that are less than an acre, right? There's gonna be some,
Well, is that like a maximum value or is it, I mean, you have to still meet your setbacks and everything. Or is it, you're saying you can absolutely put this in whether it meets the setbacks or not?
it's,
I
you
mean-
have to meet setbacks, and you also, no accessory structure can exceed 10% of the available rear yard measured from the rear residence extending in straight lines. So it doesn't read, to me, I'm pretty sure it means viewable from the rear yard. It's very confusing language. I'm not sure why.
Mhm.
So that means
Mhm.
either as you look at the property at that back line, the accessory structure can't be thicker than 10% of the back property line. Or it could mean, depending on how you read it, if you're looking between the houses, it can't be thicker than 10% of between the side yard. And so it's not clear language to begin with, so I don't see a reason for that part, so we could just strike it.
Yeah, I have that one highlighted too, because I had a question on that. And then the other one I had a question on was the two that conflicted, that C and D. Section 2C and 2D appear to be in conflict, that whole 6 feet apart from the building.
Right. So there's a loophole was built into the code. It reads to me. Section 2C
To see,
and 2D. So an accessory structure shall be considered attached to the principal building if it's within 6 feet. Which means if it's within 6 feet, it's now an addition and not
On an accessory
not
building.
covered by the allotments and the above. So now they've got a breezeway and you've got, which is, I mean, if you want that in there, it's fine. If you're doing an addition anyways, it isn't included in that. So we don't really need it. But then it allows for something that might not be strictly allowed by building code or fire code, right? So there's a 6 feet separation required between structures. So I would just strike C.
Yeah, because D says,
Asteroid isn't.
yeah, and D says it can't be 6 feet or less than 6 feet, so they conflict. So I would say strike C.
Two C,
see.
keeping the setback, the separation between required 6 feet. Now you can probably do a variance, right? But then you're gonna have to add firewalls.
Yep.
So if there are issues, there's still a way to get closer.
And then I was asking if 3M could be moved up to 3A just for readability, because that's the line that directs the larger R2 properties to the R1 table, so they wouldn't have to read everything about R2 if they're using the R1 descriptions. Yeah, then I think, let me look, just make sure if that was everything. And I guess talks about rear yard and corner lots as far as placement. So I kind of asked you a little bit about the definition of rear lot versus side lot for corner lots, and if you could put a shed in like the rear corner versus directly behind the house.
So the code, how side yards are and rear yards, the yards themselves, they're defined in the definition section. Rear yard is defined as from the back wall to the back of the property is the rear yard. And then when you're on a corner lot, it's that side yard that is parallel from the side wall of the house to the corner that's considered the corner lot. Basically those are two front setbacks. So your outbuilding would have to be setback, let's call it 25 feet from
The
that
street,
corner
yeah.
street, right of way line.
Okay. I'd be fine with that, I guess.
I haven't seen a lot of location for corner reasons. We don't have a lot of situation. We don't really allow to driveways. I think it just depends on the amount of frontage is on. I think you need like 300 feet of frontage, which isn't.
Yeah, it's just the larger lots. There's more
Yeah.
space in the rear yard.
Yeah.
And then, so that was everything for accessory buildings.
Before we
for-
move on, just to get it all, I'm hearing beef up the language to make sure everything in the R1 also applies to the R2 over 2 acres. Striking the conflicting language on 6 feet setback.
Mhm.
Striking the convoluted language with the 10% rule, 3D. Increasing the size in 3J to 625 square feet. That's the urban residential district. Is there overall agreement on side yard placement of outbuildings?
Yep.
Yep. We're okay with side yard. So just basically meeting the front side or front setback and allowance in the side yard, front or corner, I guess, setback.
Do you want to specify for garages, or are you gonna say for any outbuilding?
Yeah.
It's cleaner that way. That way you don't
Okay.
have like just a random line separating what means what.
Yep.
It's cleaner. Okay.
Mayor? I sort of have a process question. Of course, I haven't been able to totally follow along. I didn't want to interrupt you, Counselor, on the questions, but I haven't been able to totally track exactly where in the proposed amendments that staff and the Planning Commission came forward with the questions fit in. But I guess at some threshold, I'd like to understand whether the issues being raised were issues that were presented to the Planning Commission and a public hearing was conducted on them, or are they tangential to those? I mean, if we're going to raise totally new issues, those really ought to go back through the Planning Commission in a hearing, so that folks can weigh in on that, right?
So all the proposed changes are in this
Yeah,
accessory
they're new.
structures section.
Yeah.
We certainly can take it back to the Planning Commission. I don't know.
Yes, I would at least like a clean copy to come back to this body so
can
that
do
we
that.
can digest it again, because there's been several changes that might interact with our thoughts and give us another chance to go at this. I think we beat it up pretty much tonight.
The hearing was closed on, and the questions that were just basically the sizes, generally speaking. They didn't really look at the side yard requirements, and they didn't see some of the inconsistencies with the separation. So it's all within the same section. I don't know if we need to go back for a new public hearing, but we can certainly bring back a clean copy to this
I
body.
would prefer that.
I don't know if
If
you.
that's okay with you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, maybe it's something where we could, Mayor, if I can, something that we can just, because there is no bright line, obviously,
Right.
right? I mean, to the extent these issues have sort of been talked around by the public and by the Planning Commission, but to the extent we're raising a new issue that really may impact some homeowner that wanted to do something and now that's going to change and they didn't have an opportunity to come in and talk about it, that becomes concerning. So I don't know the answer to that as I sit here.
So it would not I don't think it would stop someone from a project they're doing currently that they couldn't do before. It just opens up more possibilities, I guess, but we can, yeah. So we can bring clean copy back here. We can also swing it back through. I don't think a month is gonna hurt anything. Maybe we can just add it as an action item to the commission.
That's a legal question.
So
We loosened it versus tightening, but
there could still be setback discrepancies in the, when 125-55 is where most of the setbacks are for, even for accessory structure setbacks. So there could be language in there that we need to correct to make sure that it says you can put it in the side yard. We can just clean that up and bring it back and that would have to be a renotice because that section wasn't noticed in the paper. So we'll just bring it back, include that, a clean copy, and we'll bring it back to this body. That's totally fine.
okay.
Comes to me.
Can I talk about fences?
Yeah, let's get the, oh, geez. Get the fences.
It'll be quick. I only have a couple. So for fences, I kind of wanted to have a question or had a question about if landscaping's used for screening. You mentioned it a little bit briefly in the fences portion, like it could be an option.
So
Is there going to be a separate ordinance for landscaping or is this going to be your landscaping screening portion?
we have a separate section for landscaping and tree preservation, and buffering and screening.
Okay.
So, and most of that language is is unchanged. That's sort of in the bottom sections of some of that where it talks about, in case of screening along street, 5 feet of property line with landscaping, blah, 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 between screening fence and property line. I think we might just have to tackle those bits with that section if there's some changes that need to be done to make sure everything is in line with what we want to do with landscaping and landscape screening.
Okay, so you're going to do a separate ordinance for landscape screening?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Actually, I think that's preferable. Then section 3 talks about property on both sides of the fence must be maintained. Can a statement, something around saying the right of way must be retained as well? Because I think there's a lot of confusion on whether property owners are supposed to be like mowing or maintaining the right of way.
Doran, right-of-way maintenance is already in some of our city code sections, right?
Madam Mayor, council members, it is, the property owner is responsible for the boulevard area on their property.
All. Unless there's county maintenance involved with ditch work.
Okay. But that's listed somewhere in our
Yes.
ordinances. All right.
Yep.
Then I think that was it. I asked you a little bit about home businesses considered commercial use, but it sounds like that's based on zoning of the property. So
Yeah, so it says generally don't use your outbuildings for commercial purposes, but we have a home occupations section that regulates the
That's right.
allowance of that through an interim use permit. Yeah.
all right, that would be all my questions then. Thank you.
Okay. No action. So I guess direction to just take it back through commission and council. I guess maybe that's the motion tonight is take it back through planning commission and council again for a clean copy and inconsistencies between other section of code.
So moved.
Okay.
Thank you.